This is one of the most unique albums I've ever seen, not only for its sound, but for its drive to change the fundamentals of pop music. This album has over 100 songs, ranging from 2 seconds long to 2 minutes long, containing quick interludes and transitions with short minutes of powerful music. This album has been in development for over 8 years now, being started in 2017. So with all this ambition and work, what actually is it? Folks is an album released by the group Frinzan this February. Folks is an album sought out to do many things. The overview of the album states that it is an attempt to reinvent pop music production. Even if this album won't change most future pop albums, as a listener, it can change how you view the genre, almost reinventing your outlook on pop. This album exists despite copyright law, with it having 222 citations of samples and voices used throughout the work listed on the Bandcamp page. With the amount of samples on here, I assume that this won't fully come to streaming. The first quarter of it was on Spotify a month ago, but at the time I'm writing this, it's been taken down from streaming. Update, so it's actually on streaming now, so go listen to it. The Bandcamp page also mentions the contradiction between, quote, my belief in Marxist ideas, which is an anti-capitalistic belief, and, quote, my impulse towards the accelerationist cultural production, which is the idea that capitalism should/will be pushed and expanded until it pops. These are the general outlines that define the album, but the main themes lie in the concept. This album concepts are very much politically and socially motivated. The Bandcamp page says that Folks is a concept album, but I'm not sure if that means that there's overarching themes throughout, or if there's a whole story and narrative that I'm missing. The main concept here seems to be working in the 21st century, from the view of somebody who spent a decade working as a corporate creative, with the whole thing being once again tied to the critique of capitalism and its stereotypes, including how employers demand employees to act happy about their work, and how money and greed is affecting the music industry. The description of the album mentions living through the death of the music industry, and that's a fair thing to say, but I'm sure most people would not use that terminology here. Most people aren't as hyper aware of the situation of art and society as the people behind the album seem to be, though. I do not think that this album is crying wolf, though. As for me, it's clear that these themes aren't really exaggerated and come from personal experience instead. I'm going to be honest, I'm not sure how many members of this group there are, and who is writing the description. So if I'm vague on who in the group I'm talking about, the answer is I don't know, and I don't know how to tell. This album is dedicated to their father, who was an avid Rate Your Music user, which, from my knowledge, is where this album/group got known from. He also never got to retire from his job, which shows how their critiques of the system are from personal experience. This album uses heavy folk instruments to make a folk electronic mix, with the album being about how capital transformed folk songs from something that would be communal, meaningful, and shared to something that can be turned into the folk genre, being money-making and processed. It's a theme on here that things that used to be done for personal indulgence or community have been changed into an industry, forced to be as profitable as possible. This album seems to be anti-copyright law, with the album undoubtedly using hundreds of uncleared samples that would probably end up in trouble if this was fully on streaming. Yeah, so it's on streaming now. This theme reminds me of the most recent Violet Pony album, which also features themes of why copyright is stupid and we should be free to use whatever we want, which is a cool message. I'm half assuming that this album is a statement against copyright, as that would fit nicely along with this album's political ideas, but there's a tiny chance that they just didn't care and wanted to do whatever they want without boundaries. And both options there are really cool, so whatever's fine. This album is also very inspired by shitpost culture, with the overview stating that Folks is about the consequences of shitpost culture subsuming all art forms in the 21st century. From my view, this seems to be referring to how the internet has turned extremely serious situations and real-world events into no more than a joke at times, with nothing being taken seriously. This might not be exactly what the album is trying to say, but that's how I personally take it. If you see any of this differently or want to provide insight, I highly recommend you comment about it. The overview also says that a shitpost is economically unviable, while also having creative potential, and I think that's a really cool thing to say. It feels like a very artistic view, but I might just be reading and glazing. The sound of this album is why I originally checked it out. When I saw it was in the glitch pop category, I was immediately interested, considering that is one of my favorite genres. Folktronica also followed, which isn't a genre I'm often able to listen to, but when I can, it's really good. Not to even mention the whole reinventing pop music goal they have, which is another aspect that will attract anybody who sees. As mentioned in the previous section, this album is very inspired by folk music, with it using a lot of folk guitars, claps, and strings to make an insanely interesting culture folk glitch pop category. What am I even saying? This sound does truly create one of the most unique sounding albums I ever gotten to listen to. These sounds mixed with a variety of samples on here is so peak. One of my favorite samples on this album is the song I Walk the Line, which samples, you guessed it, I Walk the Line by Johnny Cash. This sample works really well with the song. Cash's soft vocals against the insane abrasive pop music is so complimentary. I also really like the vocals on this album. They're really smooth and not whispery most of the time, which is exactly what I look for in vocals. There's been a rumor that the vocals are AI enhanced, but from my understanding it's just a filter that was trained on his voice, so it shouldn't be a moral dilemma or anything. Every song on here is pretty fast paced, which comes from the fact that not a single song is over 3 minutes long. And there's not a single song that overstays its welcome. It starts, does what it wants, and ends. The 0 to 4 second long interludes seamlessly tie the entire album together, being creative, masterful transitions from one song to the next. The interludes are usually compromised by sampled clips taken from TV shows, such as My Little Pony, which is sampled an awful lot on this album. Song structure is never expected on this album, with the frantic sound being accompanied by random structures that make it hard to make out where the chorus is, or if there's a chorus at all. Once again, the aspect makes the whole thing feel like it's doing whatever it wants at all times. If there's an idea, it'll be thrown in the song without retreading material. This album uses a lot of glitchy elements to cut off the sound or to filter it randomly for quick flashes. The album uses a lot of this method where it adds distortion or filtering for short seconds at a time to make it seem as if the audio is glitching out. This is a really good effect that strengthens the album's message and listening experience. I really don't think there's been an album that sounds like this one does before. If there is something similar, I'd love to check it out, but before this I could not imagine such a thing existing. This section will probably be really short because a lot of the influences were covered one way or another in the concept section, but this album is obviously inspired by folk rock musicians like Bob Dylan, with his name being spammed sometimes, like that one song I forgot the name of, with Johnny Cash being an obvious influence as well. This album is very inspired by internet culture. As mentioned, shitpost culture seeps its way into a lot of the themes of this album. Sonic the Hedgehog is referenced and sampled a lot throughout the album, but I'm not sure if it's an influence or if they just like Sonic a lot. I imagine Sophie is an influence the way she's sampled a few times on here, and the same with My Little Pony as well. This album was also influenced by capitalism and the state of the world in general, obviously. I don't know enough history about the sound to differentiate references to things they like versus influence, but it's kind of a hard thing to research, so cut me some slack here. Folks is one of my favorite albums I've ever heard, and definitely one of the most unique. This album gave me an interest in folk music and country with how interested I was in the sound mixture it provided. I'd say the length is the scary part of this album, as you might find yourself getting tired of it after a while, so I might recommend listening in chunks with only 1/4 at a time, but listening all at once enhances the experience, so do whatever you think's best for you. What do you think about this album? And subscribe for more album recommendations. Yeah.